Welcome, friends. This week we are talking with Los Angeles-based actor, director, and producer Alexander Nishino. Today we are talking about friendships and social networking within the film entertainment industry. Let's get started. So I want to take a step back, actually. I want our audiences to kind of know, who is Alexander Nishino?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
Damn.
man. So I want you to tell me, just give me like an elevator pitch version of who you are as a person and also as a creative.
Well, I've always found myself a very flexible person. So that's always been, I think, a part of how I communicate and network with people. I don't really like forcing vision. I don't really like forcing my goals on other people. So I've always felt like I've been a supportive type, like in a lot of what I do artistically. That's actually led to a lot of opportunities for me in terms of like expanding my network, expanding my knowledge. A lot of let's just start with when I first started, because I feel like when I first started, it's a lot different than how I approach things now. But there are still some fundamental things that are the same. Like when I first started, I was like any other creative. You jump at the chance to do anything, whatever comes to mind, whatever is available, and that usually is restricted to your environment, the people that are in your immediate network.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you get at that time feels like it's amazing. Like.
Yeah.
Like when
my running gun sets.
Yeah, you're running gun sets. Well, it's funny that we're talking about that now, because like honestly though, it's funny that we're having this conversation, because the first project that I ever did, I think I talked to you about this at the time. Like, the first project that I ever really did, transitioning from a theater background to film background, was Hellman's Side, which was I believe your first website, your first web series, right?
My first web series in community college, and
yeah,
it was one of the funnest things I've ever done, but also one of the biggest learning experience, where you're kind of throwing yourself into that fire pit where you that water where you sink or you swim. And it was just something it was a project that was way too big for me at that age to chew on. And let's just say that I learned really, really fast, but I also learned from you guys, like people like you being on set, who had this theater background, that where you kind of knew, okay, you can kind of show me how to communicate to actors, or what you need to hear, or just gave me a chance to really kind of, taking my inexperienced ways of directing and turning that into something, okay, I can work with this, and then let's do it. And you guys always killed it.
Thanks, man. I always appreciated that, because honestly, I feel like I was very lucky to get to work with you at the time, because you were, I feel like, one of the people that was really trying to, what they say, game recognize game, right? But no, really though, because I took my acting super, super seriously, and out of everyone that I knew at the time, I feel like you took your film work incredibly seriously. Like, I feel like you took it so seriously, and you approached it from a very, very, very high-end mindset, I guess is the right phrase. Yeah, you were like the film guy at the time. I feel like in that period of my life, in my early 20s, like you were the guy, You were the Scorsese within our community college.
Oh, I wish. I was just a guy with a camera trying to make some cool stuff and running the streets at night with like one light, that's all battery power.
Sometimes two. And if you really mix it up, sometimes it was, but like, it was a lot of fun though. And it's funny too, because when you think back to that time, it's like, man, it's kind of crazy that we did that. And we're still friends, because a lot of people, and they're not friends anymore because it didn't go well.
Yeah. It's really funny, man, just seeing how that one project kind of spawned so many others after that. Because we hung out more, we started trading mutual friends, and all of a sudden we're having these like weekend things where we're going to like David's house or one of our friends' house, and just like say, hey, we're all here, we have a camera, let's just make something right now and film it. And that was really fun. And then we came to Suckus Full Fellatio, and that was a whole other thing. That was really, really cool. Our grindhouse endeavors.
It was an honor, man. I'm still waiting for 3 is all I have.
Fellatio and the 7 deadly suckers. Yeah.
Yes, I gotta get a little more overweight for that. But I think though, like, kind of going back to the original question of just who am I? who's Alex Nishino. Like, I feel like film and acting has always given me the opportunity to exercise that, because, it's like, who is a person, and I feel like who a person is, it's how you live your life and what purpose you serve to the people around you, So when I think back to then and how much of then, what parts of that time are still parts of my life now, aspects of who I am and how I live my life. I don't think too much has changed in terms of my passion for what I do. I don't think too much has changed in terms of like how I treat people. I mean, if anything, I'm a little more skeptical than I was back then. But like in terms of just like, my nature and like my love for film and acting and all things creative, like that's always stayed the same. So yeah, I would say that's still me.
Cool, man. Well, I mean, it's been a pleasure, dude, watching you grow as an actor. Which actually brings me to my next question. I was going to say, you moved to Los Angeles because you're originally from the West Covina area, right?
Yeah, Inland Empire.
And then you moved to Los Angeles, what, like 2 years ago?
2.5 now. Yeah.
2.5, man. How is just being in that? Because we can probably say that Los Angeles is a very sink or swim kind of environment. How did, as a creative at least, how did that change your mentality as an actor? And what changed for you career-wise? I
really like that you put it as a sink or swim type of environment, because it's not even the way that people think it is, I think. I feel like from an outside, because I know what it's like from the outside perspective. And from the outside perspective, you think of Los Angeles, and if you haven't lived there for more than a year, you kind of have this glorified idea of what it is, and it's based off of movies you've seen or interviews that you saw online. You don't only see the darker things. Not darker, I mean, darker, but like there's also, I think, how friendships change and how the nature of connections change when you get used to being here around certain people. And when you say sink or swim, it's funny because it makes me think of quicksand almost. And that's what I feel like will get people. It's the part of it that you don't expect, because what you think is, when you think sink or swim, it's competitive, right? Mm-hmm. It's a race. You're up against all these other people who are all hungry and they want something. They have big dreams, or they have big aspirations or goals. But I think like there's a different angle to the sink or swim part of Los Angeles. There's this part where you start to grow accustomed to how friendships and how connections are here, because a lot of them aren't straightforward. A lot of them aren't like, because I'm from the Inland Empire, and anybody from the Inland Empire or anywhere, further east of California, like the further east you go, the more suburban kind of small towny it gets. And it's a lot more, like we're just people, nothing more, nothing less, we're just living our lives, families and friends and all that stuff, like just normal human stuff. And then you come out here and it's a lot different. I feel like you come out here, before you know it, in order to stay here without, getting depressed or being affected by your environment, you kind of have to change a bit to adapt to, how people can be. Not to say what people are, because everyone's kind of different. But I do think that when you come out here, there is a certain amount of like, okay, I came out here personally because I wanted to be a working actor. I want to focus on that part of my life, and, that's my dream. But then this is a whole other part of it where it's like, you're around people who've been here perhaps for longer, people who just got here like you. And when you see some people who've been here for longer, maybe, 5, 10, 15 years, like you see them, it's kind of like looking to the future a bit, and you start to see like, okay, this person's really upset, or this person's really, really depressed. But like everyone's hanging on to that dream so much that like you kind of go into a certain denial. You stay here too long. I feel you start to have to go into a denial of, how you really feel, because, no, I'm not supposed to feel depressed. I'm supposed to put on my persona, my networking persona, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you do that for too long, like you start to forget what reality and, your industrial persona is, and it starts to get a little confusing, which I'm thankful. I've met some really great people out here that have kept me grounded and, kept me mostly myself and, organic as I am. But I feel that is one of the pitfalls of coming out here. It's like, it's getting caught off guard by the quicksand of it. And you don't know when you're in it until, sometimes for some people it's too late. So for some people it's like, immediately they start to notice right away, like, okay, this place is different. But I think that aspect of having a kind of a professional self in an entertainment industry, and you just who you are, and balancing those two things, and nourishing both, because they're both necessary if you're trying to survive here, I think, in the entertainment industry. But unfortunately, it's like sometimes the organic part of you melts away a bit without you realizing it, and then the person that's getting you the gigs, that person isn't always necessarily this guy, and this person sometimes takes over. And I feel like when you come here and you stay here for a while, you start to notice, I'm not, it's weird, I'm professionally doing better, so I should be happier. But then there's this part of me that's like not being nourished, and that's just you, as you are, as opposed to the person who has to interact with a lot of different types of people who have different interests than yours. And, sometimes those interests aren't in your best interest.
Yeah.
That's always difficult.
And it's funny that you separate having a professional self, but also having just the original you that was, you before you moved to LA, or before you came, a creator, whether you're a filmmaker, an actor, a model, whatever you want to be. You have to separate those two. And it's funny that you have to almost protect yourself in a sense. And we talked about this last week, because that's why I wanted to have you on this podcast.
Yeah.
We kind of mentioned that once you've been in that creative environment and you've been networking and making friends, you kind of start to realize that you kind of hit a wall with some of these friends, maybe not all of them, but some of them, if not most of them, where you kind of hit this wall to where at what point is this person a friend, or are they trying to get something out of you, whether that's another job, whether that's being cast in your film, whether that's you being casted in their film,
or even I would even support. I would even go so far as to say, like, not even just getting something from you, but also considering what is it that you have to actually give. And if you don't have much to give, then why should I be your friend?
Yeah. And it's funny because it's sad that we have to even have that kind of conversation,
Yeah.
It's like, or maybe when, let's say you meet someone on set, and let's say you guys do hit it off, or you kind of vibe, but let's say they have a huge following online and you don't have a following at all. And it's like, do I, like, you follow them, but they don't follow you back because, they don't want to, they want to protect that kind of image of who they think they are, and they don't want to let you in. And again, you're kind of hitting this wall as far as like, like, I'm just trying to be your friend, and you're taking it to, you're trying to put me into like a fan base when I'm not even.
Oh, I hate that. I totally,
yeah. I'm not even playing that game. I'm just trying to,
be a dude,
be a friend.
Yeah, that's a really good, it's funny you should bring that up. I've had like about 2 very distinctive experiences with that since coming out here. And I'll try to talk about both and then keep the characters in the situation anonymous. But I was on set earlier last year, and it was the first time that I was on set with a person with a huge following. And I was like kind of, acting in the same stage as them in front of camera. And this was actually somebody who I'd followed for years, and I wasn't expecting to meet them on set because it wasn't somebody that was stated on the call sheet. So when I'm on set, I was a bit starstruck, and of course I kept my distance because I'm like, wow, it's hard to imagine. It's like if you met, I hate to bring up the name again, but Martin Scorsese. If you actually met Martin Scorsese, it's hard to like go through years and years of watching somebody's material and not feel a certain way about it, because you're not really connecting with them. You're connecting with them, I think, in a completely selfish way, because you're interpreting, whatever their material is towards, what it is that you need. So it's kind of hard to like meet them all of a sudden and then have a normal conversation, as just people. I feel when you have that, like at your back. So yeah. So I try to keep my distance. Of course, there's a party that wants to say stuff like, I love your material, or I love all the stuff that you've done over the years, but like, you don't want to come off like a fanboy. You don't want to come off like a fanboy, but And I think based off that experience, I'm like, okay, it's ironic because I feel like when you meet somebody perhaps with a following who's established, you know, they've already gone through a line of people that all wanted something from them, or they've already gone through people who were totally fake, or like they totally wanted something from them, you know, whatever, whether it be emotional or whatever, you know. And I feel like when I think about that now, I'm like, oh, wow, geez, like in order to actually kind of be friends with somebody who I think is established or has kind of laid a place for themselves in this industry, it feels ironic to me that in order to be friends with them, you kind of have to fake not being like, you kind of have to fake yourself into not seeing them in the way that they've put themselves forward for their career.
Yeah. Or just trying to having to separate the fact that your value is tied to what you've done creatively. And it's like, no, like, I'm just a person. Like, I have other attributes, personality wise, that I can offer versus what my work or my resume can offer.
Right. Right. And I guess, you know, you're interviewing me at a point in my life where, you know, I haven't exploded.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm still working on like trying to understand everything and lay the foundation for what I would like my career to be in the future. And who knows how that's going to turn out. So interviewing me now, as opposed to, you know, down the line where I would hope that I've gained some clout and some reputation for myself with my work, like interviewing me now compared to then, that in itself, you know, I only have a limited perspective on things from my stand, from where I stand now, right? So I think where I would like to say, like, based off where I am now compared to who knows where I will be down the line, where I am now, it's like, okay, it's hard for me not to view myself as just a person, and I'm starting to reach this kind of point where I'm like, oh, interesting. It kind of feels like in order to compete further to get to a higher playing field, almost like if you're a cinematographer and you know, when you first started out, you were doing like music videos and you're only charging like, you know, $100 for a video, and then you're
doing them for free or something.
What's that?
Was it doing them for free or something?
Oh, doing them for free, and you're doing great work, and it's like, oh man, this is like $500 work, and then you start doing the $500 work, and then now it's $1,000 work, and now it's $3,000 work, and it's like, I feel like that's the same thing, you know, as an actor. It's like you kind of have to consider yourself a different way in order to justify being worth more, and I feel like there's something in that, you know. I feel like there's something that's like, okay, if I want to compete on a higher playing field, then yeah, I have to I do have to adjust my attitude towards myself and how I consider my work and my product. You know, it has to be worth, not just, it has to start with you, right? Like it has to be worth that much to you in order to communicate that worth to other people. So I do think that, you know, I will have to personally change over the next year, over the next decade to be where I want to be. And I feel like that's kind of a part of it. That's a part of moving from where you are now. And I have a question for you, actually. That's an interesting thing too, because it's like, because you're a cinematographer, it's kind of different. To look at your career and think about every time you've crossed the threshold, every time you've moved up a tier, you know, in terms of like clientele, in terms of like the types of people that you serve, you know, with your work, like as you move forward, it's like, okay, it's relevant to the conversation in terms of having that professional self and the part that your mom knows, you know,
that's
your friend know, right? And then there's this like, I don't know, if you walked around just like as the guy that your mom sees, then it's like, okay, how much am I going to be able to charge people for what I do, or even get my value, right? And that's the thing. It's like, it's funny, your friends and your family and the people that you grew up with, they kind of view you as just life, you know, a form of life, just a person, and like, and then on this other end, it's like, no, I'm not just a person. I am a set of values. I am a lifestyle. I am, you know, I can
Instagram page.
Footage and, you know, like how do you, I don't know, like how do you deal with that, man? Or how have you dealt with that? You know, has it been difficult for you as a cinematographer?
Well, I definitely think because obviously your family grew up with you, and so they treat you one way, you know, the way that they know you. And then you have yourself that you the way you see yourself on social media, your Instagram page, your website, your resume, the work you've done, you know, obviously that's the person you almost want to be in a sense. Cause like I think your Instagram page or your social media is kind of like the way you design it is kind of like the ideal way you see yourself. And obviously that never matches up with how your family knows you and how your mom knows you, or um, your high school friends that grew up with you may know you. And I think we talked about this last week where it's almost like when you go back to your hometown and you hang out with like your high school buddies, they see you as high school Alex, and you're like, no, I'm, you know, it's almost like you went to LA or you went into your industry, you became the alpha that you see yourself as, and then you go back to your high school friends for like a weekend or something, and they kind of put you back in that beta box, and it's like, no, man, like I've moved too far to be a beta. I want to be the alpha. Like I've made myself into an alpha and I deserve to have that respect. But we had also talked about that you kind of have to have that. It's like a fine line because we hit a wall with our creative friends. Cause like we were saying at a certain point, why do you want this relationship? Do you like, are you trying to get something out of it? Like, am I trying to be, you know, in your next film? Are you in my next film? Or
Right.
what's in it for you? And you kind of hit a wall with creatives as your sole friends. Like if your sole network is just creatives, that's really cool for like a little while. And then after a while you hit a wall and you're like, hey, you know, you only see people when you go to work or when you're working on a job together, or when you're collaborating on something that like they want or you want. And there's no true authenticity in that unless you just find someone that you just mesh with and you guys can move past that organically. You hit a wall with having friends in the film industry. And so in a sense, you kind of need those high school friends or just friends who aren't in the film industry, like you were saying last week. You need someone who's not a creative to kind of give you that real sense of what a real friend is like, you know, someone who's not there to use you for something like for the next job or whatever. And so I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think we kind of did like a little wave there.
Yeah, no, I felt it. I think when I think about that, because that's the thing. That's another thing that's changed about me over recent years. When I first started acting, trying to get into it, I always kind of, maybe, I mean, I'm even speaking for myself, but I always felt like the acting made me, or gave me self-esteem, right? And it gave me a sense of worth, value, but also it made me feel like I was more than who I was. And I think we all kind of want that. We all kind of want to have that that value to the world. You know, I'm more than just a dude. Like I can do a lot more than that. You know, I don't just eat and sleep and go to work. Like I do stuff I feel that is important, you know, and it's valuable to people. But it's funny because like when I first started doing it, that's why I started doing it, because it gave me value in a point in my life where I didn't really have a purpose. And so now, you know, almost, how many years has it been? It's 2008-ish. Wow, 12 years. It's been like 12 years. And now it's different, you know. I've been doing it long enough to where I feel a lot more confident in it. And I've proven to myself that I do love doing this, because, you know, you don't really love doing something if you haven't done it for a really long time, at least, you know, just commit to it. I got past the honeymoon phase of this relationship with art. But I think now I'm at this point in my life, it's funny because I feel like I've come full circle. And I feel like maybe you have too in a different way, but like coming full circle back to kind of a part of who you were before. It's weird. It's like, and I think it comes with age too. Like you come full circle with, you know, who you were then, who maybe who you were then that that person didn't like who they were necessarily. You know, they weren't really proud of who they were. And so like we put a lot of work into our lives over the years. And, you know, we've added to ourselves as we move forward. But it's funny because now I'm like, well, now I'm starting to realize there's parts of me that don't change. You know, I mean, bad habits aside, but like there are parts of me that's like, okay, Alex will always be kind of that lighthearted, you know, kind of goofy guy at certain points, but he's also serious at other points. But like, I've come to terms with that more so than anything else. And so it's interesting, you know, entering the industry, trying to enter the industry 2 years now, kind of starting to come to terms with, oh wow, you know, it's funny that what got me started doing this in the beginning was to kind of exit that beta phase of my life. You know, I started doing this because I didn't like being a beta, and this gave me an opportunity to be like, oh, hey, you know, it gave me an opportunity to kind of want to make a name for myself a certain way, and to be regarded with a certain amount of respect in the community, you know, because of the value I was trying to provide. But it's funny because now I'm like, I still appreciate those things, but the part of me that didn't like myself then actually likes myself now. It's kind of funny. So like the parts of me that the parts of you that I feel like you can't really change as the years go by. That's the part of you that your parents probably knew, right? Like, no, he was like that when he was a baby. You know, they can say that about you, and it's funny because like in those early years, I actually didn't like those parts of myself, and then now that I'm, you know, heading into, I'm not gonna say my age because I limit my casting, but it's interesting because I'm heading into this point in my life now where I'm like, oh, geez, I don't have any problems with that person I was then. And it's funny to me that I even did have problems with those things. 'Cause a lot of those things, they're not bad things, and they're not things that make me a weak person. Because honestly, it's like I can have a soft-spoken demeanor, but if I get shit done, that's all that really matters, right?
Yeah.
Now, at this point in my life. Yeah. Yeah.
So Alex, I want to ask you, man, because again, we've been kind of circling around this idea of, you know, making that journey to being in the creative industry. You've been in it for a while, and speaking for myself personally, you know, when I kind of went into the film industry, in a sense, I almost kind of I created a whole new network of film creatives to surround myself with. And I started to hang out with those people more and more because we had more in common creatively. And that was my outlet. That was their outlet. So we connected more. And I kind of left that high school version of myself behind. And in a sense, I kind of regret some of that. But now I'm at a point where my whole network is just film creatives. And we talked about how, at least for me, I've been hitting a wall with people where, you know, if I want to just hang out, just to hang out, it's not easy. I get people are busy and people have their own work that they're doing, but unless I put, hey guys, let's do this film, or let's do something together that's creative, or let's make a project, or let's give each other exposure. That relationship isn't really that authentic. Again, some people you get that with, and some folks you can reach that organically, but for the majority, I'm seeing that you hit a wall with people, just socially, you know. What advice would you give to people watching this, of what they can do to get around that or to get out of that? Like, how can you deal with that? Because after a while of being in that, you kind of feel alone. You kind of feel more just like you don't have a true outlet to vent. Because the whole point of to define a friend is someone to be there for you, to hang out with you, or to vent to, or swap emotions with, or just to hang out and have fun with. You know, I think the term friend is a really big. It can have many definitions, but you know, it's got to be someone. I think at the end of the day, it has to be someone that you can rely on, a good friend at least, someone that you can rely on to be there for you. You know, when you're kind of in your darkest moments or your happiest moments, you know. But since you're not getting that with most people, what can you do to kind of see, okay, I'm going down this pathway where I'm venturing into this pathway where I'm becoming more of a recluse, I'm more alone, I'm more depressed, I'm suffering from depression, whatever. What do you think people can do to not find themselves in that position?
I mean, there are several things. Like one thing that comes to mind immediately is seeing a connection for what it is. I think because being in denial about the nature of a connection, I think is the source of pain and stress for people in a lot of different areas of their lives, like relationships that shouldn't be, you know, like what started as a hookup.
Yeah.
You suddenly want it to become a long-term relationship because you think you're in love or something. Or like, I don't know, you know, I feel like I know it's a bit of a stretch, but I think it's pretty parallel to what we're talking about because when you look at that relationship analogy, there's a lot of disappointment because there's a lot of built up expectation in terms of what you want that to become and what you think it is. Or yeah, even what you think it is in the present, right? Because you want something. You know, we're human beings, we have needs. So when I look at, you know, connections in the film industry or the entertainment industry, or just creatives in general, like when you talk about that, how do we, you know, when you bring up the question of how do we approach friendships and in an industry that's a lot of it's based off of, you know, what you have to offer and what you're doing next. That's the first thing that comes to mind is understanding, you know, who am I? Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah. So like when you meet people, I feel like everyone does have that. I once worked at a studio for a little brief moment, and the guy who was I was an intern with some friends. And the guy who was running the studio, he gave us some really good advice. And it's funny that it comes back now. He said that everyone has who they are, like that self, that's just the true self, and they have the representative self. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Like the representative self is that the face that will get us the most and best results possible. And this person isn't necessarily that person.
Not always, unfortunately.
Fine, you know, there's somebody that loves that person, and somebody that loves that person. That's true. But you know, regardless of whether you are loved or not, but like there's somebody that does, you know, care about this person, at least to some degree, and then there's somebody that does care about this person, and the people that care about this guy or this girl and this guy and this guy and this girl, like the people that care about each section of you don't want the same things and don't see you the same way. So I think it's really, really important to understand, like, and that takes time and experience, right? Like where we're at right now, like understanding, okay, this person draws a certain type, this person draws a certain type. Don't confuse the people that are drawn here with the people that are drawn here, and having a healthy, balanced relationship between the people that both of those sides of yourself draw, both of those sides of yourself draw, having a healthy relationship with those different groups. It's really important because one could view this person as fake, right? But you know, that's like dudes who go to Starbucks and shit on the barista for not giving them their number. You know?
Yeah.
You know, like when I go to Starbucks, I go for the coffee, but some guys go to Starbucks because there's a cute barista, and they get upset because, oh gosh, she's such a tease. No, she's doing her job. And so I don't see a big difference I don't really see a difference between that barista who everyone worships as a false idol, and this guy who wants to be a great actor or, you know, a recognized actor. I don't think there's any difference between those two. I think that everyone has a persona when they go to work. So what's healthy? I think perhaps not viewing investing all your eggs in this basket as the path to happiness. Like perhaps not thinking like if I put all my eggs in, you know, in this basket and paying more attention to the needs of this guy, maybe, you know, don't neglect this person because this person is just as valid. This person is the person, I think, that's a part of you that if you neglect, it's a slow burn. Like it's like it goes back to that, you know, what is it? What was that analogy you used about the Los Angeles being was it quicksand?
Sink or swim, yeah.
Yeah, sink or swim. I feel like in that sink or swim, a lot of people think this is the person that can get out of the quicksand, or this is the person that can, you know, stay afloat.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, you know, thinking about that, it's like, well, you know, maybe this person isn't as weak as you think. And I think that's probably it, you know, as we're talking about it, like we think we have to be a certain type to have value or to be seen as tough or to be seen as assertive or having high confidence. But like there's actually nothing wrong with this person. It just depends on I think how you build them up and and how you show this person, this part of yourself. I mean, how you show this part of yourself attention and
Yeah.
nourish that part of yourself, because they definitely both have different needs. And you know, maybe we're at a point in our life now where maybe feeding the needs of this person isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, it's almost,
Maybe they're not weak people. Maybe they're actually strong people. It's just a perspective shift. Maybe we just need a perspective shift. What's up?
yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you definitely have to, because again, if you separate it, there's your true self that you kind of you grew up as. That's your high school self. That's the person you kind of grew into being. And then there's the professional version of you that's like the ideal version of what you see yourself as. That's you on social media. That's you in your movies or in your work. There's those two of you, and you're constantly feeding the professional self, but you don't cater to the needs of your real self. And I feel like your real self you can, as a professional, you can have all of these creative and professional relationships in your network, but your real self needs to have a circle or a network as well of people who are just like that, people who are also bringing their real selves to the table. And when you're a professional in a creative industry and you're trying to make friends, make friends with people who you want to see that real self, you're kind of you're taking your real self and expecting someone else's professional self to kind of let you by to get to their real self. And
Which won't happen. Yeah.
most of the time that's not going to happen. Because people don't want to do that, because again, it's a very sink or swim kind of environment, and B, people don't want to be seen as weak or as people don't want to let you past their content creator or their influencer self. That to them, they want to have that fan base, they want to have some kind of status, and maybe that's a way of separating the two of you. Hey, I'm this and you're that, and let's keep it at that. Or I don't know.
Well, also there's value. It's funny you should bring that up, because I've seen there's something I've also noticed that I really do want to talk about too. It's value by association. Value by association, because I think that's a large part of what it's a large part of what keeps people at a distance from each other. Because and it's funny too, because you'll meet some people who maybe even as actors or even as cinematographers, they think they're amazing, and you look at their work and you wouldn't be so proud of it. They might be okay, but like, there are people. That's the funny thing about Hollywood. A lot of it's beefing up value. Trying to sell. Like, there are people that are charging way more for their work than somebody who craft-wise seems a lot better, but they just don't know how to sell themselves. And that's the funny part, right? Yeah, I think thinking about how people are in this city sometimes, especially if you're like more established, then it's like, okay, now I can't. For example, like if I was doing comedy videos on Instagram, and I've reached a point in my career where I'm in the maybe 3 digits, even 4 digits followers, right? Like, if I'm starting to get to that point, it's like, then you see it. Like, it's not something that I'm just like hypothetically speaking of. It's like, you can just look at it, just go on Instagram and look at people's work, and you'll notice, like, okay, they're not working with a certain type of person anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, working with amateurs per se. They're working now at that point. They're working with people they think have potential, or they think are already on the same level, or on a higher level, because they're working up the ladder. And as you're working up the ladder, you stop looking back. I think
exactly.
Or at least you don't interact with whatever was 3 steps below where your foot is right now.
No, I think that's actually a really great example of, as you move further along in your creative career, hats off to you. I'm happy that you're succeeding, but at the same time, you kind of stop looking back, and that sucks, for friendships that you had or connections you made, with people that are kind of like, oh well, they're off, and once you move up the ladder, you kind of associate yourself with a certain kind of status, and you don't want to, it's like I think that mentality alone is there, and because that mentality is embedded in everyone that's in the industry, again, you hit a wall with people because no one wants to let you in too close because A, you're not going to last that long, or you're not going to be there for very long. And
Yeah.
B, no one wants to reveal their true self in this highly competitive environment because it's so much of you versus them,
Yeah.
and
I
so
think so.
it shows weakness. But again, you know, no one wants to let you in too close because you're not going to be there for very long in the first place.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize that when they move to an industry or go into an industry or that's this competitive and this creative. And when you don't know that, or once you aren't consciously aware of that, you're like, hey, why don't I have any friends, like any real friends I can hang out with just for fun, that I can talk to or vent to or whatever. And you know, that creates a depression.
Yeah. And even just like, it's funny you should bring that up too, because when you're thinking about hanging out with friends just for fun, it's not like you can undo what a decade or more, a decade or more is worth of being a certain way in the industry. Because I mean, yeah, you have to kind of change how you act and how you feel about things, how you react, especially. I think like having those things under control, like that's I feel like is also now embedded in it kind of goes back to what that stereotypical thing that your small hometown people might say of like, man, after Alex Hogarth moved to Hollywood, he changed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you changed. You're not that guy anymore. And I feel like, I mean, it's like we still have that. It's just like I think, um, I think if this is something that you're doing long term, which is I think is the case for us, like we're not going to undo, what it's taken us to get to the point where we're at right now. Not to say that we're at the peak of our careers. There's a lot more down the line. There's a whole life to be lived. So I think that if you were to hang out with old friends, it may feel awkward, yeah, because you spent all this time investing into this person that you believe is the one that's going to get you to the success that you desire. Like, and there's no one doing that. So I don't think we should look at that part of ourselves as a negative thing too, because it's also a source of value and confidence for living our lives. But when you're hanging out with friends, like if they're really good friends if you're talking about back in the day type friends, like if you're hanging out with back in the day type friends, if they're not saying shit like, oh, Alex Hogarth, he's like he's look who's too cool for school. I don't know what they say, but like who, right? You know what I mean? Like if they're making comments like that, well, maybe I don't know. Depending on what your strength of relationship is with them, maybe they're not worth the time that you're spending with them. But if you're just hanging out and nothing eventful's happening, maybe it's time that maybe we're supposed to be okay with that sometimes. Like maybe we're supposed to be okay with like not every move not leading to something else. Because I understand that fish, that fish brain. Like I have to keep swimming. I have to take what's the next project? The next project is like breathing for a lot of people in the entertainment industry and in arts, just even arts, purely arts. Like what's the next thing is the biggest deal. Because like that's what's going to give you your next breath of air, and that's what's going to give you your next rush of self-worth. Like I understand that, but I think when it comes down to leading life, understanding that differentiation between the two, and being able to be okay with I know there's a time and place for being this person who's very driven and very very aspirational, but then also there's a time and place for being. And when I think about a regular person, when I think about friends from back then or like whatever, like People who like, and we talked about this last time. People who you see that you haven't seen them in years, and you meet them, and it's like, wow, you haven't changed. It's crazy. Why would we want to change? You know, and it's like people who are part of that world. I think they have their own sense of value, and they have their own. You know, to me, what makes them valuable people in this world we live in is that they make us appreciate, I think, living perhaps in the present. I think that, and perhaps maybe they're just trapped in the present of years long past. But I mean, they have their jobs, you know. But other than that, it's like, okay, I used to live in the same neighborhood with the same people and the same folks. Like, I feel like there's a certain, they're just okay with. I mean, maybe they're not okay, but like, there's a certain piece of the moment that they have, or peace in the moment that they have. And but see, here's the thing, though. It's like you go back and you. And you see, yeah, it's like, okay, you see like a friend who's like, I'm not even speaking of anybody in particular. Like you see a friend who isn't happy with their life, and you think to yourself, oh gosh, thank God I went my route because I'm happy with my life. Thank God I'm not this person. Like, well, like when you're looking at that person and you're considering them, it's like, okay, well, are they as sad or miserable or unhappy with their life as you feel like they are? Because sometimes it's just like they're not feeling the same thing as you, and not on the same wavelength. You know, it's like from your mindset, it's like, oh man, you must be miserable. You just compressed it all, and like you just. But then it's like, no, I mean maybe, and I mean these are things I'm kind of thinking for the first time too. It's not like I've had these thoughts like frequently before. Like maybe that person is just okay, and there's nothing. Maybe that restlessness or like. That the concept of you could be living a better life. Maybe maybe that's just your mind's adding way more to it than there is. And that might be why it's just fine to just hang out with people who are okay with having the same life every day and for the next decade. And maybe that's what friendship is outside of the industry. You know, kind of coming to peace with the part of ourselves that is just sitting in a chair. And that's just it. And some people just do that and they're happy. You know? Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like what you're saying is being in the industry kind of makes you constantly think about the next gig, the next job, the next social media post, because all of those things are what you source value from, and that's not a way to live because your glass is never full. Whereas if you can kind of live for yourself, live in the present, live in the moment, be happy, be humble, be grateful for what you have, and just, like just live in the moment and kind of sit back and appreciate where you are and what you have, then your glass is kind of always full in a sense. And maybe people who aren't in that high-paced industry, you know, whether it's film, music, whatever kind of art or creative industry you want to be in, people who aren't in that world, they're able to kind of just sit back and say, you know, this is my life and this is what I do. This is my 9 to 5. And, you know, it's simple, but it's easy. It's low stress. I come home and I do what I have to do. And it's like, you live in that moment. Whereas you're continuously hustling as a freelancer and as a creative. You're the hamster that's on the wheel and you can never stop moving. And you know, that's maybe emotionally or socially that's not the kind of place you need to always be in. You need to find that time to get off of the hamster wheel and just live, just graze, just sleep or something. I don't know.
Yeah, graze. Graze is a good way to put it. But yeah, you think of cows, they're like, I mean, have you ever seen any animal less stressed than a cow? Like it kind of, you know, while you were saying all that, it made me think about, you know, when you're in that rat race or in that constantly moving environment, there's never really any time for people to enjoy each other or you know, I guess it depends on the person, but I'm overgeneralizing when I say this. Like maybe there's not enough time for people to enjoy each other for who they are, because who they are is always changing for the next project, Like whoever you were at that time, like you're not that person because you have to be a different person for the next project, a different person for. I mean, and some things are the same fundamentally, but like still, it's like you restart in a group of people unless you have like a friend that you always see on the same sets. You know, and that's either because you're in the same company or it's just pure coincidence that you're in the same circle. Like, but then also like when you look at people who I think are not in that life, are not a part of that lifestyle, and they're just kind of more okay with just who they are as they are. You know, they're not really thinking so future. It's like more present oriented, which kind of goes back to why it's like you haven't seen them for like years, and you go back and it's like you haven't changed. It's because they're just so present oriented.
Mm-hmm.
They're so present oriented that like they don't really feel like changing much at all. And so when I think about them, it's like, oh, okay, well, because they're more so who they are every day, the same way every day. Like there's a lot more opportunity to I think connect, because you're kind of like friends in that circle. They kind of are living at the same pace, you know, and that pace doesn't really involve moving to a different city every couple weeks or leaving the country every couple months. Like that pace is a lot more oriented with like what's in that. Well, excuse me, like that pace is a lot more oriented within what's in that neighborhood or what's in that household, you know, or that family. Like I didn't value that when I was in my early 20s. And I feel like it was because I just feel like in terms of my environment, it goes back to the beta conversation. Like it doesn't feel good to feel. I mean, you may not have been, you know, you may not have been. It may have just been a purely mental attitude thing. But at the time, I definitely felt like I was at the bottom of the fish tank. Like that's how it felt. You know, I didn't feel like I was.
You go through that high school experience, and it kind of it turns you out into like, you know, you come out and you're just like, you know, the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good. No, anybody who knows what that feels like, we can all agree that no matter how you look at it, like I'm not gonna look back in fondness at how I felt, because I know how I felt.
Yeah.
Like you just didn't feel good. You just felt like kind of suppressed, I would say. Suppressed, not really being allowed to perhaps take a leadership position, you know, or I mean, mainly that, honestly. You know, not being able to lead the way and do what you want, and then have people be surrounded by what you want. And, you know, it's cool though that to say that, you know, we've moved on in our lives to where, you know, we entered a new environment where it's a fresh start, and that's why a lot of people come out here for a fresh start and create something for themselves, you know. And we've successfully done that at this point in our lives, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it, you know, as the years go by. But I'm happy we did that. I'm happy we made that choice, you know, to create something for ourselves. Like a lot of people don't do. And some people, you might go back and, you know, out of those people that haven't changed, maybe there is that other person who was in the same position as you too. Like you were both, like you ever been in a group of like 6 friends, and you knew who was at the bottom of the barrel with you, because that was the person you talked to probably more.
No, you're right.
People. Like I think back, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it was for me too. Like, and when you're at the bottom, it's like, yeah, you talk with people at the bottom of the barrel, and and some people decide to leave the barrel, you know, and they go back and, oh dang, that guy who was at the bottom of the barrel with me, he's still in the same place.
He's still there.
No, you know, like that's what it could have been. Oh shit, that's crazy. Like, but you know what's funny though, like I've never really met anybody that was there. It's fun. It's weird. It's a weird thing, life, you know, because I have never really met anybody, or at least in terms of my network, like I've never really met anybody who was there with me, who's in the same place now. And I feel like most people, they like you and me, like they just when you start in a place like that, you don't want to stay in a place like that, and you don't want to go back to a place like that. Which is why, like, I look back at the people that even were in that space, you know, social space with me, like they're all way more alpha now. Like a lot of them are like they own businesses now. They got married before anybody else, and you know, like they just everyone responds to that space very differently. But something that I think happens a lot is they fight for having some kind of control in their life, which I'm happy we do. I'm happy they do, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny to kind of sum everything up finally now. Again, we've been, you know, I think the whole topic of this discussion has been how do you have a successful relationship that's fulfilling for both your professional self, but also your real self, while being in a creative industry and the struggles that come with that, you know, hitting walls with people, you know, seeing a connection for what it really is. Is it a connection or is it an actual friendship? And talking about all that, you know, it's kind of funny to see us, you and I, because again, like, you know, we met through, you know, we're both creatives. We have been friends for, I don't know, almost like 9 years now or 8 years now. I don't know how long it's been. And we've kind of been able to, like, I feel like with us, that was never really a problem. Like we started out, you know, helping each other out with each other's films and projects. And it was able to organically move past that, where we could hang out now as friends, see movies or whatever, or just, you know, granted, I think a lot of the things that we do are projects, but they're fun stuff too, you know, but we've moved past to stuff. We've moved past things where we're producing things together now, or just getting lunch, you know, fun stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I know you've moved to LA, and I know that you're, you know, obviously much more busy now. And, you know, I'm doing my own thing where I have a house now, and I'm doing, you
You're
know,
busy too.
I'm doing things here. But I feel like you, I think you mentioned this last time, whenever we do pick up the conversation, it's like, you know, it might be, you know, 6 months later, but it's almost as if, you know, we had just finished talking like last week or hanging out last week. You know, we pick up right where we left off.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nice to see that, you know, you're one of the friends that I have that is the contrary to what we've been talking about, you know. And I think people watching this might say, but you guys, you know, are friends, you know, you guys are actual like real friends. And it's like, yeah, we are. And I feel like we're, you know, speaking for myself, you know, you're one of the rare relationships where I've been able to kind of like move past that just on set we hang out, you know, like I think we went to Comic-Con together, you know, and things like just like
thanks for the hookup, by the way.
Yeah, no worries, man. Just for like, you know, fun stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we have to realize that we're not going to always have these kinds of relationships. But you made it a good point to see a connection for what it really is, and not, you know, you can try, but don't get your hopes up if it's just a connection, you know, and try and find friends who aren't creatives, who kind of have a different outlook on life, and they're not part of the hustle game, and, you know, just, you know, trying to have a normal connection with them, and live in their shoes, you know, step out of the hamster wheel for like, you know, a month or two or even a year if you can, and just live in the moment, be happy with what you have, be humble, and, you know, be hustle and move up the ladder to get where you want to go for your dream, but also look back, you know, don't be afraid to help those that came before you up the ladder as well. You know, that's the whole point of you going up the ladder, is that you're paving the way, you know, for other people who are in your position, people who you know, actors or creatives that you know are just as good as you, but have not gotten their recognition, and, you know, when given the opportunity, help them up the ladder as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that thought. That's a very good thought. It's not something I think about very often. I used to think about that a lot more than now. I feel like in last couple of years, I've grown a lot more egocentric, I guess, self-centered. Not to say that's a bad thing. But I do think, though, I personally could stand to reflect that. Well, that's another thing too, because when you think about it from that perspective of like, okay, looking back and being able to help people up the ladder, that's also coming from that's also coming from a standing point of, or a mindset of like, I'm further along, or my life's better than theirs in a certain way, and I don't know, that's the part that I'm a little skeptical about, only because that could lead to, because I can see from the other end, like the other person's side, like if I came at it from the angle, I feel like they might be offended, or like they might, you know, it just depends. I guess it depends on how it comes up in the conversation.
Yeah, everyone's a little different, you know.
Yeah, yeah. It just depends on where in the space you both are at with each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
I think definitely in conclusion, you know, we just have to kind of make sure that we feed both of ourselves. You know, we have our professional self and then we have our true self. And we can't, yeah, we need to put on that professional face to help, you know, work in the industry and be, you know, respected and taken seriously. But also, you have to also feed that inner self that you have, you know, give it friends that are true and authentic, not just professionals who are also putting on a facade, but also, you know, just take care of both selves and find a balance between work friends and authentic friends. Um, and yeah, man, I think when you boil it down, it's just making sure you take care of yourself and always find a way to stay humble, live in the present. And yeah, you can hustle, but yeah, again, live in the present and live in the now. Um, yeah, dude, I think I'm gonna sum it up then. I think that kind of sums it up, dude. Unless you have anything else to add, let me know.
Um, yeah, sure. Yeah, I do have one more thing.
Go for it.
Yeah, kind of listening to what you had to say in the conclusion. I think because I consider this one of the realer friendships, and when I look at it that way, I think, okay, well, maybe a part of kind of seeking out that legitimate connection. Maybe a part of that is kind of paying attention to who you can like. Maybe people should be spending less time with relationships like industrially oriented, hoping for something more, and maybe they should be spending less time in that arena and more time with a specific group of people in their lives who perhaps they don't really pay attention to, but the ones that, because I think everybody has somebody or a group of people in their life that they can always go back to, and just pick things up where they left off. Kind of like that's how you describe this friendship. You could go off, do your thing, go hike in the Alps, wherever you're gonna go next, like, and then come back, and then I'll be like, hey, what's up, man? Like those kinds of people in your life. I feel like those are the ones that kind of, they're part of that world, that real self world, and that's kind of like it kind of describes the lifestyles of the people that we think of, that we revisit, the ones from our past, because in a way they don't really, they can pick up where they left off with you. So maybe there's something in that. Maybe there's a truth in that, meeting people outside of that group. You don't have to go back in time, but I think meeting people outside of that group and paying really close attention to, like, well, wow, that's crazy. Like, I can talk to them every time, like we never even stopped.
Yeah.
And finding those people, I think, is the most important thing for personal life. And also hustle is good too.
Yeah. No, man, I would 100% agree with you, dude. 100%. I feel like we kind of had a journey through this conversation, and it was good talking to you, man. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But dude, thank you again, man, for joining me. It's been a pleasure having you, dude. And I'm so happy to kind of introduce fans to who Alexander Nishino is. If you haven't seen his work yet, please check it out. It is amazing. Alex, if you have any things to pitch really fast as far as any projects you're working on, things coming up, now's the time, man. Let us know.
Oh, okay. Well, right now I'm working on a side project entitled Project Space Cowboy. It's a sci-fi comedy that I've been working on since a little before quarantine. I'm really excited towards where it's going right now. It's definitely something it's my fun project. It's just a passion project. That's mostly where I'm putting a lot of my time into. So yeah, check out Space Cowboy Now at Space Cowboy Now. Check out at Space Cowboy Now on Instagram. That's where I'm posting most of my content. Follow me on Instagram as well. My actual active account. It's at Alex Nishino. Pretty straightforward. And you can see some of the stuff I've done. I'm going to be changing up the content in the next year. Something a little more organic, a little more actual personality. More meaningful. Yeah. And if you want, hey, give me a click on IMDb. Always appreciate the click.
Awesome, guys. That is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast/vlog. If you guys did, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. Also, guys, last but not least, if you haven't yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time.